Hello everybody and welcome to the June 2023 recap. What a surprise, I'm actually getting this out on time this time around. Hopefully, it should be on the 1st or the 2nd, probably. We'll see about that. So yeah, yeah, hopefully I'm on time. So first of all, I do want to talk about my living situation. Or like my real life stuff. I held that concert a while back, like in the just about the middle of the month. Now, I haven't actually yet edited the concert because that is actually taking quite a bit of time. Most of it will be because I recorded it once again live, and I want to give them mid speeches. I want to actually subtitle them. Also, I want to do minor censoring because there's people walking in the background, and I would like to keep them the privacy they deserve. So editing that is taking a bit more time. Now, the concert is actually a bit more of a different style, or rather a prelude to a different style of concert that I might be holding in the future, where I try to paint more of a picture of a story that I'm trying to tell through the music itself, but with more added narration in it. So that is the thing. So next, I want to mention that we had the Juhannus, which is the midsummer festival. It's a really nice thing. I went to Tampere with my friends, to my friend's place, had a lot of fun. We partied quite a bit. It was a thing. Now unfortunately I did get sick, which was kind of a thing why this is a bit delayed, or I didn't get it exactly on time. But yeah, now it was actually a corona scare that I would have gotten COVID or something, but my test came out negative, so I probably didn't get it. I had some minor like symptoms, but those could have been just a regular flu. So now, of course, it is summer as well, so I do have to do field work every now and then. I don't actually mind. I love spending time with my father, and it is just a pretty good workout. It's exhausting, it's very tiring, especially in this heat, but it's a work that needs to be done, and when you reap the rewards, it is absolutely worth it. Minor note here, I will not be showcasing all that much of the artwork because I want to keep it very spoiler free. So that's why unfortunately this is going to be very light on actual action, and as I've done with everything else, well, I'm not going to show that much out of the games. Like, it's going to be really just from this direct tutorial beginning, as well as the manga that I will be talking about. All of it will be just basically spoiler free. Then onwards to other sections. First of all, I will be talking about not that many things highlighted this time around, but the first of all will be Fire Force, which I have been reading quite a bit. I've gone into it a pretty good chunk, almost 250 chapters by now, and I do want to highlight quite a bit. So first of all, I'll try to keep this rather brief. The artist is of course the same as with Soul Eater, and surprise surprise, it has some of the similar flair to it in the best possible ways possible, especially the insanity effects, which are really amazing. They look really cool. I very much enjoy those. They look like the visual style is just fantastic. So the special characters have a really nice special abilities, all centered around fire, but they all have a very, very nice and unique twist to it, which the artist has demonstrated very nicely. Now, I won't be highlighting them here because of spoiler reasons, so there's a lot of cool special abilities, and those are very cool. Now, another thing that I really quite enjoyed is that they are not sugarcoating the violence at all, and it gets very, very brutal at many moments. Like, they ain't pulling punches here. Like, they're absolutely just killing people left, right, and center. So it's really fantastic. But it looks pretty grotesque at points. So the action scenes are also something that I very much enjoy because they are very well illustrated with excellent lines of action that showcase how the movement is going, where they are, how the attacks are landing, and where they are landing. Because the main character uses their feet, so they kick quite a bit, and especially demonstrating how the legs move is very important to keep the flow of action being consistent and interesting, and the artist has done a fantastic job in that aspect, and especially the after effects are something that are very amazingly well done. Of course, I did come into the series I didn't watch the anime all that much, but I did listen to some of the, shall we say, crunchier sound effects, which, well, everybody who has watched the anime knows that those are quite nice, so that is quite the thing. Now, of course, the abilities of the characters are very nicely varied in the way that they allow for very interesting and creative combat scenes, even though the basis is very simple and every character has a rather similar starting point in their abilities, in that they are all fire, but they are varied enough that it doesn't get boring, and they allow for, like, the power system is like really fantastic in that way. And one thing is that the flow of the story is actually really good, and even in the most verbose of chapters, the info dumps are not actually that bad, and they are accompanied by very, very good striking visuals, which tell the story really effectively and demonstrate what exactly the story being told is, so you can really easily and quickly digest all of the information without having to go too deep into the text. And although there is a lot of text to be written, it's not that bad, it can be read. However, I do have one huge downside which I absolutely cannot showcase into you, or actually, like, I guess I could, but I don't want to. And that is something that I heard is a bad side in Soul Eater as well. Now, I have watched the anime of Soul Eater, and yes, it was in most situations rather annoying, and it is here as well. And that is the fan service aspect, which, huge quotations, I did not enjoy at all. It is distracting, it just demeans the characters. It's just like, there's one character who it is very fitting for, but for everybody else it's just really, no, it's so bad. Like, the fan service just ruins a lot of the moments, and it makes it's not good levity. If you want good levity, you could take, like, examples from One Piece or Naruto and stuff like that, even though Naruto also stumbled quite a bit, and there's a lot of other series that do levity very effectively, but in Fire Force the fan service just ruins it quite a bit, and it's really distracting, and not in a, like, titillating way, but in a way that it just is annoying. It gets in the way of the story and just makes many of the scenes just like not good. And this is not me being a puritan. I like my good parts of titillation quite a bit, and there's actually one chapter which I quite enjoyed, which is servicing a different side of fans, shall we say. And that was fine because it's kind of fitting for the story, but, like, the actual, like, female focused fan service is just well, maybe not disgusting, but I absolutely do not enjoy it. Well, but in general I did enjoy the series quite a bit so far, so it's been fun. I'm gonna continue reading it till the end. So, the first game I want to highlight is Shattered, A Tale of the Forgotten King. I have played this on and off every now and then, but I finally decided to complete it during the month, and not complete, well, beat. And I have to say, it was a positive surprise. It is a very interestingly bleak, but with, like, in the landscape, but it has a lot of color in certain aspects of the world design, and especially in certain levels it gets really colorful, and it uses a lot of bold, like, very defined colors. Like, just there's, like, one landscape that is just completely red, and that is, like, a very interesting change of pace in the world. And then there's completely like almost white, and there's like the world design is very beautiful and very like monotone, but in a very good way that makes it look beautiful. The game has very little like Metroidvania aspect to it, in the way that you don't actually get new abilities or like movement abilities specifically. What you get from the beginning of the game is what you have until the end, and that is actually kind of good because you can get used to the controls quite easily, but you still know how to actually use them throughout the whole game, and they don't change, and those will be your toolset that you can use everywhere, and it allows for very interesting sequence breaks to the game, and that way the platforming is very free-flowing in the way that you are not restricted to the actual path that should be fairly straightforward and obvious, but you can actually like just break out and go free and do your own things every here and there. Now, there are some actual roadblocks that require you to go through the intended route, and that you have to collect certain things which come only after bosses, and yeah, that's a thing, but even the bosses have a degree of platforming them in the way that you can actually still like cheese them in different ways. I actually did cheese one boss completely, like I trapped him in a very weird area. I won't be showcasing that though. Now, speaking of, the platforming is the big thing that makes the game really fun and interesting, because everything is kind of built around it, and you can like really edge the geometry quite well. But I do have to speak about the combat, because that is also the big aspect of the game. The combat can be very iffy, if you get my drift, in many situations, in the way that it doesn't actually have really good feedback to the like strikes and stuff like that, and that makes it feel very floaty, but not unresponsive, however, because there is very little like stun lock things except for the enemies, but the player character rarely gets stun locked, and when they do, there's like interesting animation in like specific situations, so the challenge stays fair in a way. Now, I feel like the sound design itself is the biggest problem for the game, because it doesn't like feel like you're doing all that well much damage, or you're doing that taking damage and hits like that, so the feedback is really kind of skewed by that. But that is like the only big problem with the combat, because otherwise it's just like the timing, you have to get used to different timing, and the parry mechanic is kinda difficult, and you have to like specifically learn how every enemy, like if you want to parry them, you have to kind of really get used to how the timing with each attack works, and that can be frustrating, but that's kind of the deal with like Souls-like games. So it isn't really that big of a problem, and you don't actually need to parry that much. Now, I did use parrying every now and then, because it is sometimes the easiest way to just do damage, and it kind of, if you have like moderate sense of freedom, it trivializes some bosses. Now, with the controls being kind of floaty and the combat being kind of distant, or rather like not unresponsive, but like with no clear feedback, it makes everything feel a bit distant in a certain sense, and that makes it feel very disconnected from you as a player. And that actually fits into the story quite well, because the story is very abstract and surreal, with flowery prose every here and there. In a way, it seems like a dream, but the prose really feels like it serves no actual meaning to the story. But I think because I kinda sped through the game, I missed probably quite a bit more. But it's still, in my mind, it feels like the lore is just obtuse for the sake of being obtuse. It's just like complex for the sake of complexity, without actually trying to convey that much of a meaning to it. It's fine, it's serviceable, it's interesting, it stuck to my mind, but it doesn't feel intriguing in the way that it makes me want to go and dissect it in the way that like Souls lore does. Now, the budget is obviously quite a bit lower, and it's a small team, probably one of their first games or something, I don't know, and that's actually still irrelevant. Because it doesn't feel like that is the main focus, because it just feels like it's trying to convey a sense of a collapsing or like dreamlike world or something that's like going to disappear, and that's actually kind of carried out pretty well. So regardless of all of the nitpicks I have, the setting is pretty cool and unique, and I think that is one of the biggest strengths of the game. Even though like the combat is actually pretty fun and it's challenging, I still feel like the moments I had the most fun was when I was exploring new levels, new sceneries, and they were wildly different from the other visions and other scenery. And that is the biggest strength, the level design just in general, because it just is built really well into the platforming mechanics. And yeah, that's what I liked. It's fantastic. But it is not without, it is with issues that can't be really easily solved even by a simple patch, because it's really the core game mechanics that cause those few issues. Still, I enjoyed the game. I'm definitely gonna play through it again at some point, because it just was actually fun, just like platforming everywhere. So yeah, if you want a kind of an interesting Souls-like experience that is really quite unique, I can actually recommend the game. It's not that expensive. It's a unique game. It can get frustrating at moments, and the lack of direction can be really, really big pain. But it's fine. It shows its edges. Like, it's rough around the edges and there's some issues, but I quite enjoyed it. So the final game, or the final part of the video I want to highlight, will be a game called Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth. So it's a very interesting Metroidvania semi-RPG platformer, which is based on an existing franchise of the Record of Lodoss War. I have no experience about that. I have seen the pictures of the characters and stuff like that. I know that I did know that it exists, but I had no previous experience about the franchise itself. So, first of all, this is made by the same team that made Touhou Luna Nights, which is one of my favorite games. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, the game design is very different, because Touhou Luna Nights was very heavily platforming focused, and this is very differently focused around combat and story, and especially the bosses. So even though Touhou had real nice bosses, it was mostly the platforming. Now, the sound design is something that I immediately want to highlight here, because it's a stark contrast to the previous entry, or rather the previous game I highlighted, which was the Shattered. Because sound design in, I'm just gonna call it Wonder Labyrinth, because that's the simplest title. Sound design is really quite nice, with really good background music, which was the similar case with Touhou, in the way that they had really good background music. Now, they also have really good sound effects, which, due to the way I record my stuff, means that I won't be able to highlight here, but the sound effects are really crunchy. It feels real nice, they are very fitting, and they give you really clear sense of feedback, and they highlight especially the elemental aspects of the game very, very well. The combat is of course the biggest thing about the game, and it is definitely the major draw of the game, but we still need to actually talk about the platforming, because it is very, very important, and it can supplement if you have really, shall we say, lackluster combat skills. Your platforming prowess can actually carry you quite a bit ways, and if you don't have very proper platforming bases, the combat can get very difficult in some of the bosses. So the important thing about the whole system is the dual element system. You have two elements you can mostly manipulate, which are wind and fire, and a lot of the environmental traps, hazards, and the enemy attacks are it's like they are color coded with the corresponding element, and that way you can always like switch between the elements with a single click of a button very rapidly to absorb that or drain the element to get mana back and take hits. So that's very cool. And that is when you have like leveled up the opposite element to the one that you are wielding, or when you are wielding the fully leveled up element, that actually gives you quite a bit of healing rather rapidly, which does unfortunately trivialize some of the bosses, but I feel like the bosses were built around this thing that you can like heal at will from the bosses. But it's still and because they designed the bosses around that, it means that it gives still a very fair challenge in the way that I have died to many of the bosses multiple times, but it still feels like fair because I know why I died, because I didn't manage to avoid stuff. I didn't recognize the pattern, or I didn't memorize the pattern well enough that I got hit. I lost the ability to heal, or I wasn't able to switch quickly enough, and just like stuff like that. And it feels really fair. And the bosses are very well designed around these two elements and the rapid switching between them and the unique aspects that both the elements do have. And that makes that the bosses can be designed in a very, shall we say, punishing way, well, or fair, like challenging way, that you actually have to be constantly keeping in mind that you have two elements. You cannot just like tank everything without switching between two elements, and that means the boss design is very well done. It's very, like, every boss is kind of cool and unique, and they can be very creative, although there's a lot of like humanoid enemies, but they are still like, they got a lot of bang out of their buck with that one. They made a lot of humanoid enemies that are really wild and different and interesting. So I really enjoyed the bosses. And especially because the game is still kind of progressive in the way that the bosses are built upon the knowledge that you gain from previous encounters, which is highlighted during one section of the game. It means that the challenge is very fair because you already kind of know what kind of things the bosses can throw, so if you just play carefully, you can first time one of the bosses. So yeah. Now, unfortunately, because of the healing being so generous, it means that the normal enemies do become just minor obstacles quite often, especially once you get access to certain spells. But especially during late game when the enemies start to block one of the aspects or one of your spells or anything like that, it means that they can actually be problems. But that's fine. I think that's absolutely fine, because most of the time they're just obstacles. You can even like float past them, and that's really fine in my opinion. And since the game is a Metroidvania, you do get a really nice suite of abilities that allow you to explore the game in whole new different manners. And there's a lot of the abilities do get like very useful even during combat quite often. Now there's also a lot of secrets in the game which do give you access to new spells and stuff like that. Now there's the way that the game actually kind of has a minor exploration problem is that a lot of the game is just going and pressing a colored button which allows you to progress forward, but it's fine. And there's some abilities which just are not useful and they are basically just keys to go forward, but hey, that's fine in my eyes. The map is also one of the most fantastic systems because I feel like it is very clear and it gives you enough information to explore but without revealing too much, and still keep backtracking going to find new secrets from the previous areas. Still keeps that pretty fun and gives you still a very nice challenge when you try to find stuff you might have missed or stuff you couldn't access before. And the map is made mostly just to be very useful without handholding you too much. So the game actually doesn't have a really huge signposting problem in the way that you don't get lost that easily, but it can be somewhat easy in many situations, but that's more of a leniency thing, and it's not like the game is completely devoid of challenge, so yeah. So yeah, it's a very nice Metroid platformer, mostly focused around bosses, but the story is actually kind of nice. There's some really nice visuals, storytelling, and symbolism, stuff like that, but I will not be talking about that. You can go and experience it on your own. Yeah, I really enjoyed the game. It's a really, like, from Hollow Knights, this is really interesting, different, change of pace, still pretty creative, really nice challenge, without being too difficult. Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. It's a really nice Metroid game. Hey, last minute addition here. So there's one YouTuber which I do want to highlight, and that is Graeldon. They are doing really interesting reviews. They are going through Steam in alphabetical order, which means that they are starting with special symbols right now, or they are doing videos of games with special symbols and titles. So yeah, they do excellent work, like really good reviews, very well detailed. If you want to see a very unique style of going through a backlog sorts of, but maybe something where you can find some hidden gems or games that might pique your interest, and to know which games to even avoid, because Steam has a lot of garbage in it, I really do recommend going to them. Like their channel, I'll link that. I'll show the channel card here thing, and I hope that everybody who is interested in some interesting reviews goes and checks them out. They have really good stuff, cool style, so yeah, props to them. So for the outro, I am trying to make this video kind of fast, so I won't be rambling here all that much, but I want to thank you all very much for your patience. I hope that you all are doing well. I'm gonna start hopefully doing more intricate stuff rather soon, but you know how it is with stuff. Sometimes you keep busy. It is what it is, but I don't carry too much burden about that right now. I'm just gonna focus doing what I wanna do. So, hopefully I can get my health completely in the tip-top shape. And I hope the summer heat lets up, because currently it is kinda difficult to do a lot of work. So, I thank you all very much for watching. I'll hope to see you in the future. Have a great day and stay awesome. Ganmu out.